Shalom. Have you ever wondered, why exactly did Jesus die on the cross at Passover? Or what was really going on when John the Baptist was out there in the Jordan River? Perhaps you're wondering, why are we blowing a ram's horn at the Feast of Trumpets? Or why do we have certain times of year that we have to count? And what exactly does it mean when the Bible says the first month or the fifth month or the seventh month? There's so many questions that we don't know. But if you come and join us for our conference, we're going to be able to discover a lot of these answers. Hope to see you there. Shalom, everyone.
This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israel warns of an upsurge in terrorism ahead of the Jewish holidays. What's behind the trouble? And Israeli Defense Minister Gantz tells world leaders the way they deal with Iran now will determine their future. Plus, the second anniversary of the signing of the Abraham Accords. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl. Israel is concerned about potential outbreaks of terrorism ahead of the upcoming Jewish holidays, beginning with Rosh Hashanah later this month. And all signs point to a familiar instigator, Iran. The director of Israel's Shin Bet Secret Service says there's been an upsurge in Palestinian terror attacks this year.
We foiled 312 significant terrorist attacks, stabbings, shootings, suicide attacks, and have made 2,000 arrests.
Speaking at a counterterrorism summit, Ronen Bar pointed to a massive increase in shooting attacks against Israeli troops and civilians in the West Bank. As Israel heads to its fifth election in 3 years, Bar says the instability has led to more attacks.
From the intelligence that we have read, from the investigations of attackers we have conducted, and also from many years of familiarity with our adversaries, wherever they are, we can say today without a shadow of a doubt, the political instability, the growing internal division, are an encouragement to the axis of evil, to the terror organizations and individual attackers.
Bar says the rift developing in Israeli society is the most complex challenge Israel is facing. Israel's enemies, he says, believe Israel's national resilience is fading. In an operation called Break the Wave, the IDF stepped up its counterterrorism raids in Palestinian areas a few months ago. According to Israel's public broadcaster Khan, that led to a warning from Egypt urging Israel to back off, saying it worries about an escalation and possibly the situation spinning out of control. Bar calls Iran the underlying problem, a sentiment echoed by former Israeli intelligence officer Avi Melamed.
The Iranian regime says openly that their intention is to set fire in the West Bank and to fuel the flames in the West Bank.
According to Melamed, another contributing factor behind the violence is that the Palestinian Authority is at a crossroads.
The term of the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, seemingly is towards the end. There is already an ongoing process where potential rivalries are kind of like taking positions There is a lot of weapons in the West Bank.
Should Abbas leave the picture, Melamed describes one scenario being a power vacuum leading to an internal armed struggle between Palestinian factions. And even now, there's weakening of the Palestinian Authority's sovereignty in parts of the West Bank in places like Jenin, Hebron, and Nablus.
This is a very alarming process, and this is, by the way, one of the major reasons Israel is constantly and recently increasingly intercept that phenomenon, and particularly in those hubs or pockets.
According to Barr, the PA security forces need to be strengthened in order to restore calm, and their public wants that too. But it's up to the PA to do it. Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz is warning that when it comes to Iran, the world faces two different realities depending on the choice leaders make. And he says the time to choose is now. In a briefing for the UN Security Council and Abraham Accords ambassadors, Defense Minister Gantz says Iran is advancing its nuclear capabilities, especially its rate of uranium enrichment. His conclusion, the international community must ensure military deterrence in addition to diplomatic and economic efforts. The UN Security Council must take action in the face of the Iranian challenge. Israeli leaders have been especially steadfast with recent reports the U.S. might rejoin the Iranian nuclear deal. Proponents within President Biden's administration believe it would restrain Iran, while Israel believes otherwise. In New York, Gantz told the annual Jerusalem Post conference world leaders must choose the reality they want in 10 years. Options are growth of Iranian radicalism or progress such as the Abraham Accords. Gantz calls the first scenario alarming.
In this case, Iran succeeds to tear apart the Middle East in a calculated and bloody manner with three practical steps. First, Iran systematically bases itself in the region via proxies, providing them with personnel, advanced weapons, and military know-how.
So far in 2022, Gantz has seen a sharp rise in Iranian attacks using advanced weapons like drones and surface-to-surface missiles.
Secondly, while the Iranian people suffer economic hardship at home, Iran spends huge budgets on terrorist organizations. Today, Iran provides more than $1 billion per year to its proxies in Lebanon, Yemen, and in Gaza.
Resuming an agreement would lift Iranian sanctions and release another $1 billion to the regime.
Lastly, Iran bases itself in the region by building massive terror industries. The picture only darkens if Iran will be allowed to gain this nuclear dangerous umbrella.
Gantz says the second choice toward progress in the region requires strong leadership, unity, and pragmatic steps to address Iranian aggression.
First, we must strengthen industrial and economic ties, followed by diplomatic, intelligence, and military cooperation under the CENTCOM umbrella. Secondly, we must insist on regional and global security. And regardless of a diplomatic solution, we must ensure credible military deterrence.
The coming months and years will determine which road world leaders choose. Coming up, the second anniversary of the signing of the Abraham Accords. It's been 2 years since the official signing of the Abraham Accords, and business is booming for Israel and her Arab neighbors in the Gulf. Bilateral trade between Israel and her Gulf allies alone has already reached $1.4 billion this year. And that's just the beginning. Here's a story we did last year after a trip to Abu Dhabi about making water out of air. It may seem far-fetched, but an Israeli company has become a world leader in this groundbreaking technology. And it's strengthening ties between the Jewish state and the Arab world. Abu Dhabi is a modern jewel in the Middle East and capital of the United Arab Emirates. Located on the Persian Gulf, you might think it has plenty of water, but there's a problem.
I'm not talking just about the ocean that you see outside. I'm talking about the groundwater. It's all very, very salty and undrinkable.
Last year, the UAE became the first Arab state in more than 25 years to make peace with Israel, when it signed on to the Abraham Accords. That opened the door for WaterGen.
The second I heard and saw that the Abraham Accords were signed, I dropped everything I was dealing with and went directly to the UAE in order to strengthen the accords.
Dr. Michael Mirilashvili is owner and president of WaterGen, which makes water out of air. Now that technology is helping make friends out of former enemies.
We started here almost 6 months ago, and today our machines installed all over Abu Dhabi.
Temperatures in Abu Dhabi regularly soar to 100 degrees and above, and that's hot. But this WaterGen machine here in the Al Fay Park gives water and refreshment to those who come to enjoy and play.
The United Arab Emirates is very, very similar to Israel because it's a relatively young country that is located in the middle of the desert.
Now WaterGen and the Emirati company Al Dakra Group have signed a landmark agreement for a water research program.
We opened a Water Research Institute in the UAE, which is a sub-institute from Tel Aviv University in Israel, named after my father, Moshe Mirilashvili. It helps us at WaterGen to produce a formula for the best premium water in the world, which will be the tastiest, the cleanest, and the healthiest in the world.
Ben Gurion University of the Negev is also involved. President Daniel Chamovitz says the goal is to combine research on water and agriculture.
What we're doing with WaterGen is bringing these two institutes together such that with water purified through WaterGen from the air can then be used to funnel into agricultural systems to provide horticulture in desert urban settings.
Another major announcement came with laying the cornerstone for a WaterGen production facility in the UAE for other Gulf states and Africa. While 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, only half of 1% is freshwater. More than 2 billion people don't have access to safe drinking water. That's where WaterGen comes in.
My main goal is that every person in the world could afford to use our machines and have the best drinking water.
WaterGen co-CEO Michael Ruthman explains how WaterGen works.
For the last 100 years, people were using a very, very simple mechanism called the heat exchanger in order to cool air. When the air is reaching a dew point temperature, the humidity is separated and you get water.
Company scientists work to reinvent the heat exchanger.
Now, with this revolutionary patented new heat exchanger, we can extract up to 5 times more water per 1 kilowatt of energy than any other technology on the market.
Their biggest machine makes some 1,300 to nearly 1,600 gallons a day.
The whole idea is to place as many small machines or medium machines all around the place and to create the water when you consume it.
That includes a small genie machine for the home and even for cars to provide running water while you drive. Already in more than 80 countries, WaterGen has also placed machines in the Gaza Strip powered by solar panels. Ambassador Eitan Naeh tells CBN News what makes this partnership so strategically important.
What we see around WaterGen is that it defines the reason why the United Arab Emirates wanted to have such relationships in the first place with Israel, which is about what we can give each other, technology, and scale up.
Naeh adds why that combination leads to a strong synergy.
It's really a symbol of our relationship. We create water from the air. We create relationships. We create contacts. We create business and trade out of animosity or indifference before. Friends out of enemies. So this is what we're heading for, hopefully.
Mirilashvili says a key part of the decision is that the UAE didn't choose WaterGen just because it's Israeli.
They tested a lot of companies and compared, and they realized that we had an edge over everyone else. They told us, no one can even compete with you.
He says that's led to a stronger partnership with very good people.
When one has good and serious intentions, the Almighty always lends His help.
Up next, one of the most beautiful messianic voices in Israel. Some of you may or may not know that there's a lot of musical talent among Israeli Messianic believers. Today, I'd like to introduce you to one of the most beautiful voices in Israel.
במדבר קול קורא כאן במדבר במדבר קול קורא כאן במדבר.
So Rebecca, everyone wants to know who's this amazing young singer who sings with Shiloh Ben Hod. Tell me, who are you? And where do you come from?
My name is Rebecca, and I was born in Florida in the United States to Colombian parents that immigrated. And in 2007, we made Aliyah as Jews that returned, and we've been living here ever since.
So how did you get into music?
So at a very young age, my parents decided to send us to a local house of prayer for once a week youth watches, kid watches really. It's still happening and still running for over 10 years now, where we would just sing, pray, and worship and actually really sing the scriptures back to the Lord. And so from a young age, it's really all that I've known. And at the age of 13, I dedicated my life to the Lord, and it's been really special with my relationship with the Lord. Music opportunities have been lately, I'd say the past 5 years, since I served in the military, and throughout that was probably the first time that I collaborated with Praise for Israel, where they take worship music that is written by locals and then they put on a concert once a year.
And you've collaborated with others also, including some Arab believers?
I grew up going to this house of prayer, Sukkot Hallel, where we had annual conferences with Jews and Arabs throughout the country, and actually also from Gaza and the West Bank areas. So just worship together, no politics. We were teenagers, and so really coming around, praising the Lord together just brought a lot of unity and beautiful relationships still today.
So you could really say that the music is kind of a reconciliation or a unifier.
I've seen so much healing, and I've seen also just hearing a lot of testimonies, just how we focus together on the Lord and what He's doing and who He is.
Let's talk about a recent one, B'midbar.
Bamidbar is in the desert, and it's actually our latest music video / worship song that we just released, and it's taken place in the Judean desert, and it's actually our first song that we wrote as a collaborative. So we have been rebranding to Solu, and Solu is a Hebrew word taken from Isaiah 40, where Isaiah basically declares, build up a highway, prepare the way for the Lord and for His return. So we really do feel called to be a voice in the desert crying, preparing the way for the Lord's return.
So in general, how important do you think music is to the Israeli community, the Israeli public?
I've heard this really interesting thing that they say that when people sing the same song, our hearts beat at the same pulse. So there is a very unifying factor that happens whenever we do sing and worship together. So it's been really, really special to see the power of Israeli worship written by natives, indigenous people that can touch the local body, that can touch even local people that do not believe in Yeshua. And then worldwide, the importance, we know that Israel was called to be a light to the nations from the beginning. And so we really do believe that the Lord has called us to be a voice from Jerusalem out till the ends of the earth.
What has the response been from the world, from outside Israel, to your music?
During COVID, people didn't really have live Hebrew worship going on in the local community because of lockdown. So we started posting videos on YouTube, Hebrew worship, and then suddenly not only the local body started listening, but worldwide. And so it kind of blew up.
So you sing in English, you sing in Hebrew. Do you think you'll sing in Spanish too?
Yeah, so being a Colombian, it's in my blood. I have a very heavy burden for South America, for Latin America.
What's your hope for your music? What do you want to see it do? What impact do you want to see it have?
First and foremost, as an Israeli and as a Jew, I mean, my desire is to see Israel be saved. And of course, the next generation. I've really big burden for the youth, so it's not necessarily, I would say, only writing and singing music, but also just teaching them the importance of being a prophetic voice. It's not about who's watching or who's talking or watching us, but it's really who we're singing before. That's what really counts. And so really encouraging the younger generation to just Sing to the Lord, and let that be what we welcome Him with.
Still ahead, a look back at the British conquest of Jerusalem and the Holy Land more than 100 years ago. As Great Britain and the world continue to say their final goodbyes to Queen Elizabeth II, we wanted to give you a look at the beginnings of British rule in the Holy Land. In 1917, long before Queen Elizabeth took the throne, British General Allenby conquered Jerusalem. Here's a story we did on the 100th anniversary.
A Hanukkah miracle and a Christmas present. That's what Jews and Christians called the 1917 British conquest of Jerusalem. 100 years later, Jerusalem commemorated the victory with a reenactment.
2 weeks before Christmas, and on the first day of Hanukkah, the British Imperial Army entered Jerusalem under the command of General Edmund Allenby.
After General Allenby walked into the Old City through the Jaffa Gate, he came here to the Tower of David and received the keys to the city, marking the end of 400 years of Ottoman rule. Henry Allenby, a relative of General Allenby, read from the same declaration of 1917.
Every sacred building, monument, holy spot, shrine, traditional site of whatsoever form of these three religions will be maintained and protected.
General Allenby, he was a great military man who conquered the land of Israel and understood our city Jerusalem and its role in the world.
The anniversary celebration also welcomed a new exhibit at the Tower of David Museum.
It was a moment of hope for the people of Jerusalem who suffered so much from the war, from hunger. They waited for the change.
This wasn't about a demanding surrender of Jerusalem. That's why he got off on a horse. He wanted to show humility.
The great-grandson of Major General John Shea, who accepted the surrender, also joined the celebration.
To be here on the 100th anniversary of the surrender and of Allenby's entry into Jerusalem is very proud-making and also rather humbling.
An important aspect of the victory was Allenby's faith.
General Allenby was a devout believer in Yeshua and knew his scriptures extremely well, including the prophecies of Jerusalem. And when when the Lord gave him the prophecy of Isaiah 31:5,
like birds flying about, so will the Lord of hosts defend Jerusalem. Defending, he will also deliver it. Passing over, he will preserve it.
He was given the idea of planes flying over and dropping leaflets that said, leave the city now. So that's why he was able to take it out without destruction, as the prophecy said. Without firing one gunshot, he walked into the city.
Ken Thompson's grandfather helped conquer the city under Allenby.
To me, it has a lot to do with the fact that Allenby was a believer, that he knew his scripture, and my grandfather got to be there, was there with that. It was part of history.
General Allenby had a gift for Jerusalem mayor Nir Barkat.
100 years ago, I stood here and I received the key to this wonderful city. And I think that 100 years later, it's about time that I return it. Good for you. So it's a little bit rusty, but keep it, watch it, it's the only copy. So to another 100 wonderful years here in Jerusalem. Thank you.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem's Old City.
That's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and you can also access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blasts so you can continue to receive all of our exciting CBN content. And remember, the God who's watching over Israel, and you and me, neither slumbers nor sleeps. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.